Thank you, Dr. Austin. Hi, everybody. I know about half of you already, so I'm going to ask that we just go around the room real quick and just tell me your names so I've got them. I can't promise I'll remember them, but we'll try. So just give me your names real fast. Austin. Thomas. Tyler. Colin. Colinda. Stephanie. Linda. Okay. Tiffany. Alexis. Holly. Dakota. Equan. And Jen. Okay. No promises, folks. Jen, Equan. I can't. I'm sorry. So I am the career counselor here on campus, and I work in career services. Some of you have kind of brushed by my office really quickly before in passing, and some of you have had me as part of GA training already or come to me for personal appointments. So in case there's anything we talk about today that you would like some more help with on a one-on-one basis, my office is in Doc Bryan. We're right next to the Student Services office on the second floor, and we take personal appointments all day, most days. So if there's anything that you need assistance with, we can meet one-on-one about it, or you're welcome to come to any of the workshops that I know you all get plenty of emails about already. Okay? Every day. Our goal is to make sure you don't forget who we are. So just to get started a little bit, since you are all, this is first year, first semester in the program, I would love to just hear from you. What is the dream job that got you into this program? What is the thing that you want to do that made you sign up for CSP? I'm not talking right after graduation. I'm talking dream big here. What's the thing that you see yourself doing that in your brain said, okay, CSP is my route? Anybody? Director of Outdoor Recreation. What else? Dean of Students. Okay. Stephanie, I saw your mouth open. I'm sorry. VP of Student Affairs. Okay. I like that we have big dreamers in the room. Anybody else? Assistant VP of Student Affairs, but with no real obligations to whom? You help, but you're not the person with the weight on the shoulders. Oh, okay. Okay, you're the doer, not the guy with the crown on his head. Okay, I can live with that. So we all kind of have this big picture long-term plan, but as a career counselor, I can tell you firsthand that plans can change, but we're all kind of on a journey. Obviously, undergrad was a journey for you all that probably led you to deciding that you wanted to be in the higher ed environment. And now being a part of the CSP program, the different classes that you take and the different experiences you have in your practicum work, pardon me, in your practicum work, or being a GA or volunteering somewhere on campus will also kind of guide where you decide to direct yourself at the end of the program. And it's important to keep that big goal in mind, but we also have to think about what's going to happen 2 years from now when I have to set an immediate goal. And what is that immediate goal I'm setting that's still going to lead me to the big picture later down the road? So do you all ever work in groups in here? All the time. Do you have assigned groups that you use? Oh, you assign yourselves. Okay, so do me a favor and get in groups of 3 or 4 for me. I love this room because there are rollers on the bottom of your chairs. It makes everything more fun. Oh, you're going to win. Okay. Okay. If you guys have 5, that's all right. I need 1 scribe in each group. Pen and paper for me. Okay, so I want you all as a group to take like just 2 minutes and pretend that you are a collective single person and write down all of the skills you already have in your mental tool belt that are preparing you for what you're going to do after graduation, okay? So you can borrow from everybody in your group. What are the skills you already have that are going to prepare you for what you need to do after graduation? And just to clarify, skills are things that not everybody can do. Usually I don't have to tell this to graduate students, but getting dressed in the morning, not a skill. You would be surprised. I know. I know. Some of you all see these folks in the residence halls. I would like to see at least 7 from each group. How are we doing, ladies?
Very skilled.
You're very skilled. I like to hear it. Give me maybe 3 more. How's it going? Is this pretty easy? You just go around, got stuff. Well, you all are in different areas, right? All of you are in different areas. That helps. That helps. Well, it's a good thing. It adds to the mix. How we doing? I see that. Nice work. Oh, okay. Okay, so let's kind of go over this. This is just kind of a brief preview here. So let's go over this a little bit. Which group wants to share their favorite 2 skills? Pick your 2 favorites. Okay, we got 2? All right. Who's going first? Jen. Conflict resolution and critical thinking. Definitely stuff you're going to have to use when dealing with students. I like it. What else? Leadership, perseverance. I can take charge of people, and I can keep moving when the people are dragging me down. Or the man is dragging you down, whatever you're... Oh, there you go. Okay, Dr. Austin, I like it. Ladies? Okay, conflict and crisis management, definitely important skills. So this is stuff you guys already bring to the table. It's just kind of stuff at a moment's notice you could probably explain to somebody. These skills, the things you already know how to do, give an example of how you use it, maybe even on a daily basis already. But there are other things that you're going to have to figure out before you graduate. And most of them are a little bit more career specific. Usually when you're asked to come up with your skills, I could say in a heartbeat, I am great at public speaking, I'm a people person, I can handle conflict resolution, I do one-on-one counseling. Those are general things that I could talk about anytime, any place, and give you a good example. But the concrete skills, what we call the hard skills that require a little more evidence, are sometimes a little harder to come up with. So now I want you guys to think about that dream job in your head, and I know not everybody in the group has the same dream job, but come up with that dream job in your head, and then give me a list of a couple of skills that you know you're going to have by the time you get there. Okay? 2 minutes. Go. These are things you don't have already. Don't have already that you're going to have to get. Well then, what do you need to do to challenge yourself so that you're even more prepared? I could take it today if somebody would hand it over. Okay, do we have a couple? Does each group have a couple? We've got a couple things? Okay, who wants to share those things first? This. All right, Jen. Advanced certification and mediation and some kind of budgeting and data analysis ability. Okay, see, those are things that you may not have had a whole lot of exposure to yet. That makes perfect sense. Who's going next? Anybody? Mm-hmm. Okay, so beyond leadership ability, just knowing how to fill that authoritative role. And what was the other one? Okay, dealing with politics. And delegating. Okay. Well, and those are skills that really you don't have until you've been forced into a situation, right? We could say that any of us is capable of delegating, but until you're in a position where you say, you know what, I have to let some of this go and let somebody else do it, you don't really fully grasp it. So, spot on. What else? Mm-hmm. Okay, so interviewing because you got to be able to get the job, but also being able to bring on staff and knowing how to be a supervisor and hire people and all that. And then what was the other couple you guys had? Staff supervision, okay. Being a manager. Some of you as GAs or eventually as practicum students will have an opportunity to supervise staff members while you're still at Tech. But it is a very different role even as a GA, because if you have students assigned to you, at the end of the day, they can still go to your boss and report things instead. What was that, Equan? You agree? It's true. Think about it. If you are an RD and a student has a major issue and they don't agree with you, they can go right over your head and march into the Res Life office and talk to Allison. That's kind of the nature of it. Whether we want them to or not is a different story, but those are skills that we only get once we're forced into a situation. So then the question really is, how do we get from the skills you already have to the ones you're going to need eventually? Some of you are kind of on the path already by doing some stuff here on campus, but it's very important to be strategic about those experiences that you're seeking out so that you know that you're going to get the experience you need before you have to brag about it, right? Because we can't talk about things we don't know how to do. When you are applying for positions or seeking employment, even just part-time, I'm sure all of you have held some kind of employment before, yes? Hopefully, yes. Done something, maybe even volunteered. You look at what you're hoping to gain, which is usually first and foremost the money. But then we look at, what am I going to have to do on a daily basis? What kind of environment is this going to be? Is this someplace I want to be on a daily basis? Is this a group of people I want to work with? And it's important to start looking at the experiences you have while here in the CSP program in a similar fashion. So, for instance, when do they start their practicum work? After 12 credit hours. So for some of you, that's going to be in the next couple semesters. Is that pretty accurate? I don't know how full their load is as master's students. So when you're looking for practicum work, for instance, it's kind of like an internship. We have to treat it as an opportunity to figure out if this is an appropriate place that I want to work in the future, but we also have to treat it as a little bit of an interview. So let's say you do a practicum in my office. We have at least one opening every semester in career services, but it's not everybody's cup of tea. It's like that step beyond academic advising where you're helping students with problems, but you have to be willing to deal with the ones that need the most help, because the ones that don't need a lot of help don't come to see me. So we have students that come and approach us about practicum work, and usually we ask them to come up with a specific project or idea that they want to work on during their practicum time. The reason that I do that is because I want to make sure that whatever their goals are for after graduation, they're getting to experience something that's going to be beneficial to them. So when you're looking for practicum work or even volunteer work, it's important to think in the back of your mind, okay, I know what the big dream goal is. Maybe after graduation I want to go back into res life, or I'm hoping to get into student conduct or activities. If that's the goal, how can I make sure that that department is where I'm focusing my energy? And there are a lot of different facets to some of these departments. But when you go to, now most of you have heard of OPT. OPT? No, that's for OPE. OPT is for international students. OPE is for student affairs. Most of you have heard of OPE, and it's really nice that they do that, especially for residence life. I know some other departments go as well. And there's also TPE through NASPA. Have you guys checked that out as well? Okay. When you go to events like that, or when you start approaching full-time positions or opportunities, what do you normally think about first? What do you check first to decide whether you're interested in applying? What do you look at? Salary. If you're eligible, if you meet the requirements, and that's going to be on the job description. When we look at a job description, I do all kinds of coaching with students on how to customize their resumes for job descriptions and make sure that you look as close to the match that they're looking for as possible. But on your end, before you ever get to the application point, it's important to look at job descriptions and think about, okay, if this is where I want to be in 2 years, what are the things that they're asking for? Because I may know that as a director of outdoor recreation, I could do the job in my sleep because I'm doing it already, just in a different role. But what is University of Oklahoma going to say that they're looking for? And how do I make sure that when I run into someone from that university, I can explain that I match their criteria and not just the abilities I think I'm going to need? So I'm actually going to pull up a job description, and we're going to practice looking for those details together a little bit. Ooh, I'm seeing some fingers, some excitement fingers. Okay, you guys have all been on NASPA before, right? You know, if you go down to here to careers, there's a job board in here. Now you know. Are you being serious, Iquan? Okay. I was going to be shocked by you for a second here. Okay, so here we've got a Director of New Student Services for the University of Texas at Austin. That isn't, yeah, what is New Student Services? Does anybody know? New programs. Let's see, let's find out, because every university has slightly different language. This is another thing to start researching now, because at one school I might be called the career counselor. In my old institution I was a career services specialist. At an institution before that I was an academic advisor that just filled in on the side because they didn't have a career services department. So you kind of have to know what are the breadth of titles that I'm looking for as well here. So this position, let's see, UT Austin, they give that fun little description of who they are. When you guys get around to applying for things, it's important to read through this so that you know a little bit about the culture and what they deem most important about themselves. If they say, like if you look on Tech's website at the descriptions, I guarantee you every description of Tech says something about the fact that we just broke 12,000 enrollment right now. And I'm sure you all have heard it in one ear and out the other at this point. That's something that's incredibly valuable and important to the staff at Tech. So if you were applying to work at Tech, it would be appropriate to mention that enrollment is growing. I have yet to be in an interview, and I have done 4 search committees in the last 6 months where the top candidate didn't say, and I've noticed some growth that's happening at Tech, and I'm really excited to be a part of that. They recognize the culture and the value system that the school was using or depending on. So that's something to read for the future. But let's figure out a little bit about this position. The Director of New Student Services is reporting to the Dean of Students. So we're under the normal student services umbrella that we would expect. Directs orientation programming for 7,200 first-time and over 1,000 transfer students. So we knew UT Austin was a pretty big school. This shouldn't be a shocker, but that is a pretty big program. No wonder they need somebody just to orchestrate orientation. This is probably a year-long process just to plan 1 week worth of stuff. So knowing that now, that new student services is really just orientation, how many of you, was that what you expected from this position title? I got a couple. Okay, maybe half the room. Because we see student services and we think activities, campus involvement. It's different on every campus, so we have to pay attention to the title. But let's scroll down a little bit and see what they say that they're looking for. Usually it'll give a description of what the person's job duties are going to be. That's important. Then they'll give their requirements. Most employers, this doesn't have a section header for these different areas, but most employers will give both qualifications and requirements, which means the things that we want you to be able to do and the things that you have to have in order to get the job. If you don't meet the minimum requirements, do not apply, because you won't, for affirmative action purposes alone, get called in for an interview. It just won't happen. If you can argue your way into stating that you have the minimum qualifications, then maybe. But if they have a stack of 100 applications and you don't have your master's degree yet, and they have 14 other people that are prime candidates that all have their master's degree, no matter how qualified you are to do the job, if you don't meet the minimums, they can't hire you over all those other people. So the minimum requirements are really important. Master's degree in higher education administration. How many different titles are there for the degree you guys are getting right now? A lot. So we've got college student personnel. That's one we run across sometimes. Higher education, student affairs, student services, higher education administration. I have a master's of education with a concentration in higher ed. You can get a degree, and that's yours as well? Yeah. So there are a lot of different options, which means that when we're doing searches, we have to recognize all the different language. And don't worry if it doesn't say college student personnel. The people in this industry should know that CESP means the same thing as HEA. If they don't, then maybe they're not somebody that you want as your boss. But that's another conversation. Okay, so it says, or a related field. They're covering their bases here. And demonstrated progressive growth in supervision and leadership in the areas of orientation, retention, or student development / student services programs. What would you deem as progressive growth in supervision and leadership? Moving up the ladder? Okay, so promotions within a department or levels of promotion. What else? Mm-hmm. Right. Increased responsibility. Absolutely. Increased assignments counts. I, earlier on in my career, spent some time working at a nonprofit, and I was the assistant to 2 pastors at this nonprofit that ran some community outreach stuff. My title was office assistant. I was a secretary. But at some point, they both stepped out, and I ran a department for 4 months. That's progressive growth. I can say for the rest of my life that I ran 2 departments of a nonprofit by myself that served 15,000 clients. It was a secretary's job, but I have to be able to qualify that and explain it. So that's a big piece of this process. It's not just recognizing what are the requirements, but how do I kind of fight my way through language into explaining why I fit this requirement, okay? Areas are orientation, retention, student development, or student service programs. Orientation is pretty self-explanatory. That's when the new students show up. What would you deem as a retention area? Anybody? just about anything can technically be a retention area. That's the nice part. They're leaving it wide open on purpose. You wouldn't, I was a literature major in my undergrad, and I think it's done me well with some job descriptions. We have to read into the language and parse it out a little bit here. So retention can be academic support services, like a TRIO program. It can be academic advising. It can be working with faculty members. It can be tutoring. That's a retention service. It can be being a B2E mentor, which is called a retention program. So there are things that are labeled retention, then there's everything else, and it still counts. If you're helping a student stay in school and do well, you are involved in retention efforts. So when you get around to applying for positions, it's important that you have in your brain all of those different projects, whether it was a class assignment or a paid position or volunteer work, where you have assisted students. I tell students early on, I don't care for CSP if your resume looks awesome right now, if you're not planning on applying for everything, but keep a big long list of every single project you do in class, every single new assignment you've done as a GA, every little thing that they've asked you to take care of as a practicum student, because if you've touched it, you get to brag that you were involved in it. It's like being an unwritten author on a research article. You can't claim authorship, but you can claim for the rest of your life that you helped with the research, and that counts for something, okay? Student development and student services. What does that typically mean? Everything. Just interacting with students. It can mean just about anything. So whether they meant to or not, they're leaving themselves wide open if we use the right language. As a career counselor, I do what we call professional development. So if I were applying for this position, I might rephrase it and say, assisting with professional student development, so that I'm matching their language as much as possible, okay? Student services is any service we offer a student. So that's about as open-ended as it gets. With a comprehensive student affairs program, basically anything can be a comprehensive student affairs program. That just means that you're covering more than one facet. If all you did was file paperwork in an office, that's not a comprehensive program that you were involved in. But if you get yourself involved a little bit more in a practicum, you'll be covered there. A terminal degree in higher education or related field is preferred, so you can apply for this without having a doctorate. But if people apply and they're just as qualified and look just as good as you and they have a doctorate, they might get picked over you. So that's what that means. It's not an end-all, but it's something to know. What are some field, do you guys know about terminal degrees? It kind of depends on the field what your terminal degree is. A terminal degree is typically a doctorate because there's no real level of education beyond a doctorate other than a postdoc, which is just more research without a lot of reward other than the fact that you've done more research. But there are some fields that don't offer doctorate degrees, or if they do, it's in a related field and not exactly in the area. So they say terminal degree instead of doctorate because if you were applying to work in, I think until recently, there were very few doctorates in journalism. You could get a doctorate in communication, but not in journalism. So a terminal degree would have been a master's. So we kind of have to know that language a little bit too. Now, if you all are staying in higher ed, a terminal degree would be a doctorate. But I'm currently getting my Doctor of Education, which is an EDD. I can claim a terminal degree for the rest of my life, even though it's not a PhD. So anything that has doctor on it will be terminal for you all. Yes, ma'am. Because the subject matter was not offered in a PhD. I'm getting my EDD in Human Resource Development and Workforce Education, and that's a very unique program that very few schools offer, and most of the time it's an EDD because it's based on talent development and human resource development, which is like the training side of things, which is an education thing. So they're going to put it under the education category rather than a PhD. Now, do I have to write a dissertation like all those PhD people? Absolutely. Anyway, it really depends I think the only thing that's really a big differentiating factor for the EDD and the PhD is if you ever want to be on faculty. Would that be accurate? It depends on the department. Yes. But that is the only place that I've run into any kind of rub back on the fact that I'm doing EDD instead of PhD. I've had some people say, well, what if you can't get a faculty position with that? Well, I'm a practitioner, so that may never happen anyway. But that's the only time I've ever heard people say that that might be an issue for me. Does that answer your question? Yeah. There's a lot of little changes between those two programs. Okay, so we've got a terminal degree is preferred. The ideal candidate, okay, here's our meat and potatoes. They're giving it to us on a silver platter here. The ideal candidate will possess direct and sustained experience, which means you didn't do it just once, basically, with leadership development training, course facilitation, assessment, student learning outcomes, student and staff development, and developing and applying university policies. They just named everything you could possibly do in student services. So let's break it down a little bit. Direct and sustained experience with leadership development training. So not were you a leader, but can you train and develop other leaders? Can any of you give me an example of a time you've already gotten to do that? Training the RAs. Perfect. Is anybody sponsoring or supervising clubs on campus? Yeah, all of those clubs have presidents and treasurers and secretaries that you're training and kind of mentoring along the way. As much as some of them are more of a burden than a pleasure, you're training leaders, okay? So we kind of have to know what we're looking for here. Let's see, course facilitation. Do I have any CSP GAs in the room? Awesome. You already teach a class. That is one step beyond course facilitation, your course instructing. What would we define as course facilitation? Sure, academic advising can be course facilitation. Any other roles where you might get to do that? Giving tips on study habits or something like that? Oh, I'm sorry. My brain is on my end of the field. I apologize. Yeah, tips can count. Tutoring can count. Academic advising can count. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. What about, oh, I just had a great example and I lost it. It'll come back to me in 2 seconds. Shoot. Course facilitation. It'll come to me. It'll come to me. But courses is anything that has a curriculum. Ha! Found it. Do any of you help out with On Track? That's course facilitation. Because it's not a class like they get credit for, but that's a curriculum that they have to follow. Sweet, he says. I like it. Okay, assessment. You all are in CSP, so we know the definition of assessment, right? Is that something we're already learning how to do in your daily life a little bit? Yes, ma'am. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. Do they take any kind of statistics or analysis class for this program? That's good. That's perfect. That's perfect. All you need is enough intro to speak the lingo. Really. Yes. Mm-hmm. That counts. That counts. If any of you ever volunteer or work with a department that has to contact our institutional research office to run reports, that's assessment activities. Ooh, yeah, okay. Student learning outcomes. Are you all dealing with that in here? Yes, I'm getting big bug eyes. Okay, so you've done it in the classroom. Where could you apply that outside of the classroom in your current situation? planning RA training again. See, we can pull all of this stuff from one experience if we really wanted to, which is great in an interview. You can just kind of say, well, as I mentioned before, in RA training, I also did blah, 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 blah. Learning outcomes is also super general because it's just setting goals is the bottom line. If you set a goal and it was accomplished with whatever programming or project you were working on, you dealt with learning outcomes. Student and staff development is about training again. RAs kind of fill a dual role because they're your students, but they're also your staff, which is nice. If you work in an office where there are student workers, like Parks and Rec, not Parks and Rec, Outdoor and Recreation. That was your undergrad? My apologies. But you have a lot of student workers, right? Okay. And a lot of them do intramural stuff. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about that experience for a minute. We've got student and staff development in a nice package with a bow on that one. But we also have opportunities for training because you have to make sure that everybody's on the same page with the rules if they're going to do intramural referee stuff. You're probably scheduling them all and managing the schedules. That's a major supervisory duty. So all of those little things become this big management bubble that you get to talk about. So it's important to know all of those different responsibilities that you take on as a manager because they all count in different ways. Which brings up an interesting point. How many of you have done some kind of customer service, food service kind of job before? Okay, how many of you were there long enough to train somebody else? That's what I thought. Usually they keep the good employees around long enough to do that. That is staff development, even if you never had the manager title. So if worse comes to worse and you can't come up with something, customer service still counts. And I know that working with students, you will have plenty of examples for talking about customer service, as well as your communication skills and dealing with conflict and those kinds of things. But if you run out of examples or just lose it and can't come up with something that's going to work for you, customer service always works. Because if you have ever dealt with someone as a McDonald's employee, Walmart, some other retail store, some restaurant as a waiter or waitress, you know there are happy customers and not so happy customers. Same thing happens here on campus. There are happy students and the ones that are trying to make you miserable on purpose. Okay? Has that happened recently for you?
Not too recently, but fairly recently.
Okay. I had a poor woman that came in today, and I know she needed help, but I swear it was like she picked today on purpose because she knew it was going to be more of a challenge than I was ready for. It happens, but you get to brag about that stuff for the rest of your life, and you can spin it however you like as long as it's truthful. Okay? So that's something that I want you all to start thinking about now. Was that the wrong language to use?
No, that's great. That's fine. It's just kind of funny. You can lie, but just get away with it.
No, you can't lie.
I know.
You're repurposing your diction is the way I like to. It's all about word choice. Okay? So, yeah, English major, I can't help myself. So, this stuff aside, if we know what they're looking for, and for the most part, most job descriptions will look like this. They're not going to give a ton of detail. To give you an example, we just hired on Dr. Jawah from your program's wife, Dr. Jawah, to run my department. Dr. Beth Jawah is now the Associate Dean for Student Success, which is the umbrella that Career Services, Bridge to Excellence, Tutoring, and Parent Relations is under here on campus. When we hired her on, her job description had a lot of this kind of stuff. There was a lot of talk about evaluation and assessment of department. Woo, I didn't know I could do that. Assessment of department work. There was a lot about garnering funding and support on campus and building relationships with faculty across campus, because it was a fairly high-up leadership role. But those are things that all of you can say or will be able to say that you've done by the time you graduate. And then there were a few more specific details, like have you worked in an Argos reporting system before, which is what our institutional research office uses? Have you used Banner, which is what all of the offices use to manage our student record information? Some of those universal softwares are going to be concrete demands sometimes, but those concrete demands are easily met if you have ever volunteered in an office and they let you access the computer. Okay? So it's important while you all are in a place where you can experiment a little bit that you seek out opportunities to pick up the things that you don't already know, which is a little bit of a challenge when we're looking for volunteer work or practicum work in particular, because I know if I had been in your position and you said pick a practicum, I would have picked a department that I wanted to work in for the rest of my life, and then when I had to pick a second one, I would have picked whichever one was most convenient. But try to stretch yourselves a little bit if at all possible. Of course, if your dream job is to be an academic advisor, do a practicum in the academic advising office. That's perfect. But also spend some time going, okay, well, if I'm going to be working with students on their classes, maybe it'd be good for me to learn about how financial aid works. Or maybe it would be good to learn a little bit about residence life or student conduct, because all of those things affect what happens to them academically. And find ways to make sure that you're gaining as many different outlets for information as possible. Because the classroom is wonderful, and I'm sure you're learning a ton of stuff in this class that you didn't even anticipate. But there's nothing that sounds quite as impressive as practical experience. Okay? So, that being said, there are a few resources offered through Career Services that I want to make you all aware of. And some of you have heard my spiel before, so bear with me a little bit. But as a career counselor on campus, I do private appointments with students over resumes or CVs, if that's something you need. If you all aren't familiar, a CV is short for curriculum vitae, which is the super long resume that has absolutely everything on it. It's a little bit more of a pain to write, but once you create one, you never scrap it. You just keep adding to it. Resumes should never be longer than 2 pages, but a CV can be 10. So, and it lists every single presentation you've ever given, every conference you've ever attended, every membership you have with a professional organization. It's a lot more extensive. So I would encourage you all to think about working on a CV now, just so that you have it and then you can pull from it to create a resume that'll work every time. So we do those. If at any point you decide to go on to more graduate school, heaven help you, we do graduate admission essay reviews as well. So statements of purpose, if they gave you a specific outline with a bunch of different things that they need you to cover, or you're going in for an interview for a graduate school application. Those are things that I can coach you on. In fact, we do mock interviews on campus for positions and for graduate school. You can come in my office, make an appointment, tell me in advance or bring the job description with you, and we'll do an abbreviated interview so that I can ask you some questions and coach you through ways to answer the questions better, but also kind of watch your body language and help you with your posture and your communication skills so that the message comes across in the best, most valuable form as possible. We also do, probably not for you all, but for your students, if you run into a student who needs a little extra assistance. As a career counselor, I meet with students that are trying to figure out what the plan is. So if they're undeclared and they're trying to pick a major and they're 40 credits in and only have 5 more before they have to nail something down, tell them to come see me. If they have a major and it's just not working, I get a lot of nursing students that come see me because they realize about 1-2 semesters in that they're just not going to get accepted into the nursing program, and so they kind of have to reevaluate things. That stuff I can handle as well. I am not the whiz that's going to have a dream occupation for them that can just like poof, make it work and tell them exactly what their plan should be, but I'm good at helping other people answer their own questions. So I will reflect it back to them and ask them things until they at least start to see themselves like they're looking in a mirror a little bit, okay? We also have a lot of events that we do here on campus. We do the career fair, the big career fair once a semester, and that's actually coming up tomorrow. And there won't be a lot of higher ed institutions there except to advertise their graduate school programs. But we also do individualized career fairs for different departments. We have one this semester for the agriculture department. Next semester we'll have one for all the education majors, where we bring in school districts from Arkansas, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Tennessee. I think we had one from Kentucky and one from Louisiana last year, all looking for certified teachers. So if you know any students that are at the or close to the end of their program for education, whether it's early childhood all the way up to secondary, tell them to make sure they come in February to the Educators Fair. We do a fair specifically for engineering and IT students as well. We run the two major fairs, and this year our major fair tomorrow is looking to be a doorbuster. It's the biggest we've ever had, 60 employers coming on campus, which is bigger than some of the campuses that are larger than us yet. So that's pretty exciting. More on what is going to be helpful for you all. We run workshops that are available to undergraduate and graduate students and alumni. Anything that we offer after you graduate, you are still allowed to take advantage of, basically for the rest of time. At some point, if we are any more understaffed than we currently are, that may change. But for now, we are committed to you for the rest of your existence. So 5 years from now, you're looking for a career change, you can send me your resume and I can help you make it look awesome. I may still be here, or I may be around, I don't know, but our office will be here. The workshops that we run most semesters are on resumes. We do one on cover letters, which is also really helpful for a statement of purpose or a teaching philosophy. We do networking, both in person and online. And we do, oh goodness, we did one on graduate school this semester. We do LinkedIn and resume building workshops. Resume building is every Monday. There's a limit of 15 seats, but we have tablets. You sign up, you show up, and there's a tablet sitting right there, so you can type out what you're learning to put in during the session. So instead of just coming and hearing a lecture, like our once a semester stuff, you can type it all out while you're sitting there. We have the big career fair. We have an etiquette dinner, which is really important for you all, because you are in an industry where I can almost guarantee you will be taken out for a meal. The people who want to work with you someday want to know that they can live with you too. Because as you all, I'm sure, have already experienced at some level in higher education, we're kind of a close-knit group around here. If you work with people in your department, you probably go to lunch with them, you probably hang out with them after hours, whether you want to or not, because you work long hours with them, and they're the people you're going to see most of the time. So you will get taken out for a meal for a lot of your interviews, which means that you kind of have to know how to keep yourself in comported shape, okay? And it's not just don't put your elbows on the table. It's when do you pull out the chair? How do we shake hands? How do we make sure that we're not the first or the last person to start or stop eating? When is it appropriate to get up from the table? All those things that would seem like second nature, now that I've said them, you're kind of going, when is that appropriate? Okay? So the etiquette dinner, pay attention for that. We do salary negotiation once a year last year, but we do it once a semester, and I believe we're doing a program specifically for the RDs this semester. So if you're not an RD and you're interested in being a part of that, let Allison Vetzlavic know so that she can have you added to the list of people coming to salary negotiation and learn a little bit about that. We're certified through a program called Start Smart that was kind of initiated to help women in particular make sure that they're getting equal pay, but I advise everybody on salary. I'm an affirmative action salary woman, okay? And all of that stuff we do in workshops we'll do individually as well. So let me show you one other thing while I've got the computer up. This is the Career Services website. If you have not been on there before, it's just atu.edu/career, or you can go to the Tech A to Z at the top of the main page and look us up under C for Career Services. And there are a few things on here I really want you all to notice. Number one, there's this little button right here that says Student Resources. If you click on that, basically any handout that I ever use for a class or a workshop is embedded on this page. There's stuff on resumes or LinkedIn if you want an online profile. Here's cover letters, and oh look, there's the recording of our workshop that we did this semester. You can watch it if you missed it. So we've got all kinds of fun stuff in here. The Explore Your Options down at the bottom is for those that need help picking a major, but there's some websites in here for looking for volunteer or internship opportunities. We've got some resources for grad school, salaries, interviewing, just where to look for jobs, all kinds of stuff. So know that that's there. And then, have you all seen this logo floating around? Ooh, let's see if I can find it. This CareerLink logo, have you seen it floating around in your OneTech account? If you go to your student tab in OneTech, this CareerLink logo will show up. And when you click on it, it's going to automatically, ooh, it disappeared from me. There we go, now it's paused. That logo will automatically lead you into the Career Services system. No new password, it's just a straight pass-through. The first time you access it, it may ask you to update some contact information just because it helps us know who we're working with if we have things like your graduation date and your major updated and correct. But you do that once and you'll never be asked to do it again. It just logs you straight in. And I'm going to show you what that looks like from the inside here, if it hasn't timed out on me. There it is. Okay. This is my husband's dummy account. He's not a dummy. We just created a dummy account with his name on it because he's a tech alum, so it worked out. This is the home page. Under my account, there's a little button that says My Documents. This is the feed straight to my computer. So if you hit My Documents, oh, yeah, see, I knew that was going to happen. If you hit My Documents, it timed me out. It will allow you to upload resumes, grad essays, cover letters, lists of references, transcripts. Most of you won't be applying for jobs that are on this job board because we don't hear a lot from other institutions looking to hire education people because we're a higher education institution, and the assumption would be we would want to keep those people local rather than giving them other jobs. But I don't know why. Weird logic. But you can upload things in there, and I get a little ding on my computer that says, so-and-so uploaded a new document. And usually within one business day, I can send it back to you with some suggestions and tracked changes. So I know life gets busy, and you may not be able to come by my office, but you can still send me the stuff you're working on, okay? And we'll go back and forth as many times as you need to until you're happy with it. Or I tell you, it's okay, it's good, okay? Also in here, we have, for your students or the students you're working with sake, we have the job search tool with the job board. This is both internships and full-time positions and local part-time opportunities. When Buffalo Wild Wings opened this last year, they had a ton of postings on here because they were trying to get a lot of wait staff at once. So you can find part-time work on here as well if that's something that you all are looking for. And then under interview schedules, you can look up any on-campus interviews that are coming up in the near future. We do have companies that come on campus to do interviews because we have a large enough population of the program that they're looking for in particular, and they could just get a bunch of them out of the way in one fell swoop and get a really good batch of students. So those are things for you all to know about what Career Services does. But since I'm here, do you all have any questions for me? Are there things that I can address for you or help you with in this planning process that is graduate school? Ah. Mm-hmm. I would say, obviously it depends on the department that you're looking to move into, but practical experience is number one for me, because you can research all day long and write papers all day long, but if you haven't done it hands-on, then they're going to pick someone who has. So if you've done research on something and you find it really interesting and go, oh, this might be an area I'd like to work in, find a way to do it hands-on. That would be my number one, and I know that's really general. When it comes to more specific areas, I would probably say get at least one experience dealing with a student conduct issue, because no matter what field you wind up in, there will be some student at some point that gets in trouble and you have to deal with them even if it's not your job. So find at least one way to deal with student conduct, and also find at least one way that you know you can talk about being in a mentor or advising role. Because no matter what kind of level you're at later in life, that mentoring and advising role is going to benefit you quite a bit. Okay, so I'm a big proponent of practical experience, because what we're seeing in the workforce is that employers, both in higher ed and in the corporate environment, are saying, I understand you've been in classes and you've learned all this stuff in theory and you can regurgitate for days, but why would I pick you over someone who's actually done it? So practical experience is big for me, but find at least one opportunity to deal with student conduct, and also at least one chance that you know that you've been an advisor or a mentor to someone. You don't have to have the title, but at least one chance to do that. I just had a third, and it left me. It'll come back to me in just a second. When you're dealing with large populations of students, there are a few pieces of lingo that everybody kind of has to know, and I would, if I were you, make sure that that's kind of peppered throughout your portfolio, because your portfolio will be treated the same way that a Google search is treated. They're not going to skim through and read every paper you wrote or look at all the presentations. They're going to look for keywords. In fact, there are some larger institutions that use the same system that a corporation uses, which is a parser for your resume, only they'll do it on your portfolio site. They'll look through, and the computer will categorize information based on whether it's your contact information, your education information, work experience, or skills, and then the human resources director or recruiter will go in, type in a keyword that's really important for the position, and if you're not in the top 10, 15 people of occurrences for that keyword, you're just not going to show up. You won't get picked. So we have to be very close, pay very close attention to the words you're using to describe things. If you post things on an e-portfolio of some kind, is there a place for them to write a description? Okay, so be very mindful of the descriptions that you're writing so that you're choosing keywords, preferably vocab from the classes that you're taking, because that's going to be the kind of theoretical and practical language that they're going to be searching for as well. And some very hard skill things to make sure that you're putting in there are, of course, any experiences or exposures to specific software, whether it's Blackboard, eCollege, Banner, Resource 25, there are a few out there, but also specific exposure to policies and procedures. Everyone in higher ed knows what FERPA means. If you don't have at least one mention of FERPA on your e-portfolio somewhere, you may not get the time of day, because that is huge. That's like you can lose your Title IV funding, kind of huge. So some of those bigger issues that we know are universal for all universities, universal for universities, I like saying that, need to be tied in any chance that you get. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. You caught my bug. What, Equan? Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But will that, and I would like to do FYE, like first year experience when I graduate.
Mm-hmm.
So, but should I do, if I know that's what I want to do, should I do that, or should I look outside that bubble?
Good question. Well, that depends on how small your scope is. If FYE is the only thing that you ever want to do, then make sure you get that experience in your master's program. As far as picking practicum go, is the second practicum still optional? Okay, I would encourage you to do 2. Every time, for all of you, I would encourage you to do 2. Because you may try something that you thought you loved and discover you didn't love it, and then you don't get another chance at another one. So do 2. And one of them absolutely should be in the area that you think is the primary goal. But then maybe stretch yourself with that second one. And then think in practical terms about which departments you're most likely to run into or use. I had 2 or 3 students that I worked with last year, not because they were practicum students in my department, but because they were practicum students that worked with my department. And one of them, very nice gentleman, did his practicum work. He might still be doing his practicum work with public safety. He loves public safety. He didn't know he loved public safety before. No, he's not a practicum student. He's a GA. My bad. He loves it. He didn't know he was going to like it before, but it's been a good fit, probably just because he likes the people he's working with. And he wouldn't have picked it if it hadn't been the GA opportunity that it was, probably. But if first year experience is where you think you're going, my guess is you'll probably never find yourself in a position where public safety is something you're interested in. So then kind of weigh those options out a little bit. And I think it's just as important to consider the department you're working in as it is to consider what they want you to do. Because there are departments that will happily take a practicum student so that you can sit at a desk and answer the phones. Or maybe sit and watch them do things but not hands-on touch things. And that can affect your decision making as well. For instance, my husband is an academic advisor here on campus, and they have practicum students every semester. Some of them are great, and they develop these wonderful relationships, and they get wonderful references when they leave. But we do not allow practicum students in the Academic Advising Center to give advice. They sit, and they watch, and they learn. That is partially a liability issue. I also, if I have a practicum student, will allow them to shadow me, but I do not allow them to counsel students. So if the advising or counseling is something that you want experience in, your practicum in the advising center is a good way to get exposure to the department, but you're going to have to get your advising role or mentorship role from other experiences that you find along the way, because you kind of have to know what you're signing up for a little bit. And nothing will make you enemies faster than overstepping your bounds and trying to advise a student when you're supposed to be sitting and watching and listening and learning. Because no matter how much you know the catalog or how much you know about a particular career, there are certain protocols, which I don't know if it's an elective or a required course. They take some kind of advising class, right?
They can,
It's an elective, okay.
There are several different forms of classes.
Okay, so you may learn in a couple of them that there's a specific dynamic between advisees and advisors, which is very similar to the counselor and client dynamic, which is you have authority in the room, but you give the other person the power on purpose, which means that I would never interrupt a student. I would never undermine what they say is their opinion or their sense of value, and I also never tell them what they should do, which is why I don't allow my practicum students to speak if they're shadowing, because they don't know all those rules yet, and even if they do, it might slip their mind in the moment. So it's important to think about, when I'm looking at all these great opportunities, not just what can I gain from it or how cool would that look on my resume, but what am I actually going to get to do in that office? That should help you kind of prioritize some of those practicum opportunities a little bit, hopefully.
And that also comes in when you're putting together the contract, because you do have to have one of those before you do the practicum, so that you know what it is you're going to do in that office, and your site host is also aware of what it is you're interested in, so you can come to that agreement together.
Mm-hmm.
That's the official document you have to have approved for as your protection as a secretary.
Absolutely. Which brings up another interesting point. You all are here as much to garner connections as you are to learn in the classroom. So any volunteer experience, any stuff you do on the side, anything you do as a GA or a practicum student, it's very important that you gain rapport with the people you're working with and maintain a positive relationship with those folks. Even if you were miserable through the entire experience, you walk away every day with a smile on your face and thank them for the opportunity, because there is nothing quite like getting blackballed on a campus while you're still taking classes. And I've seen it happen. If one department deems you as someone that they did not enjoy working with, you won't get a second practicum opportunity. No one else will want to work alongside you, and that's a really unfortunate position to be in. So be very careful about gaining positive interactions with those people you're assigned to.
And also, it follows you into the field as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's a small world, and you never know who on your campus knows somebody on the campus that you want to go to, and might get that phone call, oh, this person's interviewing, let's go to
Yeah, yeah. On the search committees I have been on, the residence life person in the room typically knows someone that knows everybody, because the network is just huge. And residence life is one of those offices on campus that has a ton of staff that typically move around from time to time more than other staff might. So they get experience with a lot of different people in a lot of different places. Even when we were hiring Dr. Jawah, Kevin Solomon, our head of campus life over here, he used to be one of the heads of our residence life department. And he went to, I think, Oklahoma before that for his graduate work. OSU? My apologies. I just said the state, so I hope I didn't offend anybody. And he knows people all over the country in residence life. From, what is it, Nakur, but also from all the different places that people have worked with him as GAs or as RDs or as fellow staff members. And so for every person we interviewed, he had 3 people he could call to find out what the real digs were. Okay? So we really do need to make sure we maintain positive relationships with everyone you run into. And that goes the same at conferences too. If you happen to have enough of a conversation with someone that they get your name and your business card, they will at least remember your name for a year. So don't be rude to them 2 days later at the conference because you don't have time. It's funny how quickly word spreads like that. We have to be very careful in the higher ed industry. There's definitely some politics for you. Any other questions? Does anyone have some specific goals or anything that you want to? Yes. As a GA, number one, you're under contract, so you can't really negotiate under a contract you've already signed. And I'm pretty sure that they can change your contract the second time around, but because it's a position that's universal, and we're at a state university with open checkbook, you gotta get the same salary as everybody else, bud. Yeah. You should form a union. I'm not sure that legally you have the bounds to form a union because you're not hourly employees. And you're paid over what the hourly minimum wage would be. Based on the 20-hour-a-week expectation.
But what if ours says 28? All right, I think that's probably the direction to take.
Any other questions I can answer?
What about if we're wanting to, maybe I'll just leave it here. I just want to look at, like how you said, like looking at the job description.
Sure.
Going like what you know. Is it okay if, like you said, like being an RD, it covers a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So is that okay?
It is okay. Some of the resumes that I see from RDs that are about to graduate right now, they have so much stuff to talk about that they've done that their whole first page is just their RD work, and they've broken it into categories of different areas that they've worked within. So you have some flexibility there. Yes.
I've heard for like student services, sometimes though, having more than 2 pages is acceptable. As far as the one where like campus life, because you do certain things as a GA and an undergraduate, they'll have the material set. All right.
That well, it depends on the type of position, the institution, and how aware they are of the hiring process. So there's a lot of ifs there. If they say they want a resume, and specifically say a resume, not a CV, needs to fit on 2 pages. Resumes don't go past 2 pages. A CV and or resume, then you have the flexibility of making it as long as you want with as much information as you want. If you're at a point where you feel like I've run out of space and I still have more to tell them about, that's when we play the priority game and kind of decipher what have I done at 3 different places that I can eliminate from 2 of the older descriptions because I'm covering it here too, so that I can talk about the unique stuff.
And some of that's going to be the beauty of having any portfolio as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can give them that tag, and they're probably going to go check it out because everybody Googles or
Oh, yeah.
Facebooks or whatever. So if they're going to be looking, if they're interested, they'll look at all the other stuff, and that's where you get to give everything too.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
What if you have the opposite problem of working in a very narrow scope?
Mm.
How a lot of these emphasis
I would say try to rearrange your language as much as possible to make it applicable to the field you want to work in every time, but also watch for volunteer stuff. I tell students all the time, nowhere on a resume does it say, I got paid to do this. So anything that you do that was volunteer work or stuff on the side totally counts, absolutely counts, because variety is more than the spice of life. It will get you a job. So any opportunity you have to go kind of beyond your normal scope is helpful. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. I would. I would focus on the details from your graduate work first, and then avoid repetition as much as possible. So if there are 20 lines that are all residence life, you can just say RHA from 2010 to 2014 and kind of crunch it up together so that we're covering the more recent and relevant stuff first. Was it consecutive? You were an RA the whole time and you just moved from one facility to the next? Yeah, that's one job description. Yeah. Which brings up another point. This is more specific to resumes, but it's good when you're talking with folks too. Anytime you can quantify your responsibilities or accomplishments, that is really, really great. Because there's a big difference between supervising 5 staff members in an office and supervising 35 residents on a hall. So if you can tell them that you were in charge of 35 residents, that is a big bonus. And I use all the time, number of people, number of attendees at events, the age range of the people I'm working with. I tell students all the time when we're doing workshops, one of the first opening lines that I tell people if I ever give an elevator speech is elevator pitch. I put speech and pitch together, didn't I? Spitch. That's a new word. One of the big things that I pitch right off the bat is I have worked at 4 different higher ed institutions. And as a career counselor and advisor, I've served students from the age of 17 to 93 in both traditional and non-traditional environments, both online and on campus, both at home and in a classroom. And that's my big thing. But I couldn't say that if I didn't know how young my youngest student was and how old my oldest student was. It takes the impact away. So numbers make a big difference. Because if I told you I've worked with young people and old people, not the same thing. Yes, ma'am. Let me write it on the, is that all right if I write it on the board? It's on the Career Services website, our main office line, but this is dry erase. I have to check, make sure I'm not ruining somebody's marker here. This is our main office line for Career Services. You can call and set up appointments. Miss Jane will answer this line. If any of you have been in our office, you've met our lovely assistant, Miss Jane, and she will meet you with a smile on your face for as long as you are nice to her. And you want to be nice to her because she's the one that has the key to my calendar. Okay? So this is how you get a hold of Miss Jane, and she can tell you when I'm available, and we'll set up appointments. She does. She gives away soft peppermints in the office, which has a dual purpose because it gets people to come in, but it also makes sure that when we have on-campus interviews, the students are not blowing away the employers with bad breath. Dragon breath. Hopefully not dragon breath.
Is that why y'all got rid of
The gummy bears and stuff, those just got too expensive. Yeah. Those were coming out of a staff member's personal budget, and we couldn't afford it.
But Miss Jane, that's another good tip. Anytime you want to interview, be nice to the administrative staff.
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness, they will, because they are watching you as well, and they also think you're. Yes, they do.
Oh, absolutely. And if they do not like you or you do not get along with them, you will not get hired. Or if you work there, you will not even get your messages sometimes. It's bad. You need to be nice to the secretary, okay? That's a given. That's a given. Any other questions?
Any last questions?
And for those on camera, the number is 968-0278. I should probably give the area code, 479-968-0278. And in case you all are off campus at any point, take a semester to go do something else and come back, most of the things that I do on campus for appointments, I also do online. We can do the reviews over Career Link. I do Skype appointments for mock interviews, as well as some other things. I just need to know in advance so that I make sure I have all our equipment set up. Okay? Anything else?
Right. Thank you so
Thank
much for being
you.
here.